Hi, I'm Izzy Gentry, and I'm really excited to talk to you guys this morning, getting into a new season of the topics. I'm got so many different cool things that we're going to go through, and today we're going to focus on homeschooling. So there's two different kinds of homeschooling, and that's where it kind of falls into the category of crisis management. Homeschooling, when you're like planned, like it's totally planned. You know, like from the day that you decide to have kids, I'm gonna homeschool them. Maybe you were homeschooled, so it's not a scary concept to you. You know all about the curriculums, the co-ops, this, that, whatever, and you are just set and ready to go. Like that's awesome. But there's also another category, and that is the unplanned homeschooling. Maybe something has occurred and school is just not for your kiddo. Maybe something has happened. Maybe they're just not capable of having the resources that you need. Maybe you just don't like what they're teaching in schools today and you've decided, I think I'm going to homeschool. I think I have a better chance at homeschooling. I really want you to feel encouraged in this process because that was me. I did not plan to homeschool my kids. I did not ever think that I would homeschool. I had a laundry list of goals and ideas that I had for my kid in school, and this was not one of them. However, after doing Montessori and having really successful few early on years, they moved it more into the public sector and they started to take out more and more Montessori. So I moved him to a college preparatory school. And after being in college preparatory, I had this revelation that I was like, I don't think we're school people. I don't think that first of all, that my son is built for school. And second of all, that I am okay with the idea of paying an astronomical amount of money to only have them really honestly, truly doing an hour and a half of actual work. So I did not feel like I needed a daycare. I felt like he could learn more being at home. So I want to talk to you about that. Like, where do I start? Now, for me, I did the scariest thing that you could do, which is essentially pull your kid out mid-semester and try to figure it out. So I've been through the trial and errors, and I'm hoping that that is helpful to you as you're trying to figure out your own specific journey. So let's dive in. First of all, don't make plans. I was really excited and very prepared because you know me, I'm a strategist. So essentially, I had this very articulate idea of what our day was going to consist of. And I found that every morning that my son would wake up, he was dreading my existence. He was like, I don't want to do work. I don't want to learn that. I don't want to do that subject. I don't want to do that subject. And so it was just this struggle because I'm like, if you don't do your work, then I can't go do my work and I need to run errands and I need to do things and so we were both frustrated and it was very overwhelming. So the first thing that I had to accept was that my plan was not his plan. And that I also didn't really fully grasp that there really is no minimal requirements on a plan. So there's nothing that says that your kid has to sit in front of a textbook or a laptop for 8 hours a day. You have to kind of learn to gauge your kid. And that takes time because your kid has essentially been in school or been with other people. And so they've learned a process that's best for them, but you're having to learn a process that's best for you and your kid. And that takes time. Sometimes I know for me, my son was not super successful in the constraints of we're going to do work for 30 minutes and put your pencil down. We're moving on to the next thing. So I made a bunch of adjustments so that we could be successful. And I want to talk to you about a couple of those. The first thing that I learned about my kiddo was that mornings were constant arguments about all of the amazing things that he thought that he could do throughout the day that were not work. He's like, this is wasting my time. This was wasting my time. And it was just this huge struggle because he was thinking about all of the other cool things that he could be doing with his time. So I did notice that if he had the morning to do whatever it is that he felt he had that was more important. Typically for him, it's reading or drawing a Bible comic or, just whatever it is that he wanted to be focused on. By about 4:00, me and him would sit down with a snack on the couch and we would be able to knock out 2 hours of work. And there was no argument because he'd already accomplished the things that he wanted to accomplish. So there was no I could be doing this right now. It was oh, I've already done all the things I want to do. So there really wasn't a conflict. And so that worked for me. Hey, kids go to college at night, there's nothing that says that you have to do homeschool when the sun comes out. There's no rule to that. So I realized that from 4 to 6 we'd sit down with our dinner and we would do work together, and I wasn't frustrated because I couldn't get the things that I wanted to get done, and he wasn't frustrated because he wasn't doing the things he wanted to do. So this was a win-win for us. The other thing I noticed is that rhythm was really important for him. Once he got into a rhythm and he felt like he was learning and he was really interested, the last thing that I wanted to do was throw a kink in there and say, okay, we're going to put our pencils down and we're going to move on to the next thing. I learned very early on that I was he is so frustrated when we do that and he really hates it. So I've decided that I'm going to stick to one subject a day. And I'm going to go into this in just a moment as to what are the main subjects you should be focusing on and how do you integrate subjects into what their interests are. But I just wanted to emphasize that in my plan, it was not my plan to only do one subject a day. It was my plan to do school like school does school. And that it was not a successful plan for anybody. And so it was important for us to make that shift, and it was a successful shift. Let's talk about curriculum. The first thing you want to know about curriculum is that curriculum is just curriculum. It's there as a guideline. It is not supposed to be this overwhelming, daunting thing where you also are being tested on whether or not you are implementing this curriculum correctly. Sometimes I've got curriculum and I'm oh, I really like the content here. But he hated being on the tablet. He absolutely hated to read this on the tablet, answer the questions. So I used the curriculum online as a resource to gauge what it is we were going to learn. And then I would use the whiteboard to kind of show him okay, this is what we're learning today. And so it was almost to me a resource more than it was for him. So I had to make that shift. My kid is old school. He loves a pencil and he loves physical paper. That's just his thing. But there's times when I don't really feel equipped to be able to teach him some of the topics. Like percentages are not my strength. I can do algebra, I can do geometry, but I don't know what it is about me and percentages. Luckily for him, dad works at a bank and he is in finance. So percentages are we'll wait for dad to get home and he can help you with your math. But there's also some digital resources. It's okay if they have maybe one class they take online, one resource that you have on the tablet, one physical book, one thing that you do in person. It doesn't always have to be okay, I picked this curriculum and that's the curriculum that I have to get all my subjects in. You can kind of mix and match. And that is something that I learned from other homeschool moms. I was what curriculum are you using? And they're well, we use this for this and this for this and this for this. And I was oh, I guess you can do that, huh? So, you want to take that into consideration. Does my child learn audibly, hands-on? Again, there's times when I've used certain resources for certain things and then other resources for other things just because I learned that he wasn't learning that way. It just wasn't being effective. And he loves to read physical books, but he really hated reading on the tablet. So these are just things that I had to shift. And these are things that I had to learn about my kid because I wasn't part of this process when he was in school. He just went to school and he did his work and I got the grades. So now I'm learning oh, okay, this is his strengths and these are his weaknesses. Also knowing if your kid learns quickly or if they need repetition. I often noticed in school that he was getting very distractive. to other people because he was bored. And he was bored because he was like, I already know this. So you don't have to hound down a subject matter if they are getting it. If they get it, move on. Circle back around in a couple of months and say, hey, remember when we learned this? And see if they still remember. I know for us, we were doing Texas history. And he kept kind of being like, I get it. I get it. I get it. And I was like, does he get it or does he just want to move on? So we went and visited the Alamo, which was not the first time we'd ever been to the Alamo by any means. We live here in Texas, so it's practically like a yearly destination we go to. We go to San Antonio often. But this time was different because he remembered what he learned in Texas history. So he was able to reference some things and go, hey, Mom, did you know this? Do you remember this? Do you remember that? And it was really cool because it was so much better than getting a test grade. I could see that my kid really did learn something. So take those moments as being a gauge for yourself for success. You don't always have to have these moments where it's like, well, what do the tests say? Well, what do the grades say? Well, how do I grade this? Look at your kid. Ask them questions, watch them observe things, watch them integrate things, go to the store and ask, if you're working on math, ask them questions at the grocery store about pricing, talk about taxes in real time, do certain things that you can see, oh, okay, cool. My kid gets that. That tells me he's learning. That tells me she's learning. Let's talk about whether or not you should join a co-op. So 2 things to know. Co-op groups are an extension of school, therefore they are not for everyone. They can be really resourceful if your kid loves to learn with other kids. So if your kid just really thrives on the energy of like answering questions and working on a group project, co-ops may be great for you. But if it is something you're already working on at home and maybe you think to yourself, this is redundant, or I purposely pulled my kid out of school because I don't want to do homework. I don't want to have projects to do, things like that. Then co-ops just may not be your thing. They may not be built for you. I noticed I was really excited to join a co-op. I thought it was going to be really great. And then I saw the things that they were working on and I was like, we've already done this. So he's going to feel frustrated doing something we've already done. I'm going to feel frustrated that he feels frustrated. This is not a good thing. However, that does not mean that there's a right shoe for every foot. So ultimately for us, socialization and playing with other kids was really something we were looking forward to. So I started a group at our church that was just a homeschool fellowship. It's just an opportunity for them to play basketball together or play in the game room together, walk around the track together, play in the snack and play together, have lunch together. It's a couple of hours a week and it helps him to feel like he's getting to know people. He's out there in the world. It helps other kids who are just looking for socialization. Moms get to socialize with other moms, so that's always a win. They feel like they get a break. They get to have a cup of coffee and feel like they're in a safe environment. Their kids are playing basketball together and we're all sitting there watching. So it's a really fun way to integrate. There's sometimes field trips. We have a group. We're very spoiled here in Smith County. We have a group that is specific to Christian homeschoolers, and they have a lot of resources on their board. They're always posting different groups that are starting up, and there's like band and drama and field trips, things to that regard. So you just want to kind of keep involved in that aspect. Don't always feel like if I don't join a co-op, then my kid's not going to be socialized. There's other ways that you can participate in that matter. You don't have to be constrained to the idea of doing a school co-op. How much work should we be doing? So again, there are no minimum requirements as to how much work that you should be doing. However, there are main subjects that you should be touching on in some way, shape, or form. Science, history, language arts, math. And that's why I say I do one subject a day. That's my thing. You may have a kid that has a very short attention span and is like, no, I'm not doing 3 hours of history. That's just not going to happen for me. But it's really helpful for us to stay focused and to actually get a rhythm. So these are the 4 that we break it down. And then we have our social day. Like Mondays are our social day. They're our elective day. That's when we go and do our homeschool fellowship. That's when we really start to gauge some of the ideas that we have as far as like, do we want to take an elective? So let's talk about those: art, photography, sports, coding. Now, these don't have to stay separate. There's times that I've had to teach my son math and he's just like, he's over it, like super over it. He's just looking at me like, I do not want to do this anymore. I'm over it. And so I'm like, okay. So we take the basketball, we go out to the basketball court at our local church. And I'm like, okay, what is the probability? And we start talking about probability in terms of basketball. And now he's like, I'm in, he gets it. And so then he starts rationalizing and analyzing his own shots. And he's like 1 out of 5, da, 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 da. And he is engaging in a way that he enjoys and he's learning. So again, you don't always have to separate the two. You can find ways to integrate. If your kiddos are really into animals, let's just say, for example, my husband got my son into this obsession about learning every single kind of bird. It's their thing. And then I went to a homeschool convention and I found a curriculum that literally their entire science for the year was on birds. And I was like, well, there we go. We figured out which curriculum we're going to be focusing on. And he was like, I'm so excited to learn this. That is a great way for you to go. And like I said before, I learned my kid, and then essentially I learned what resources fit my kid. Now, not all removals from school are something as simple as I just don't want to be there. Sometimes there's a complexity. Maybe your child has special needs. Maybe they have just a learning disability. Maybe they just need a little bit more hands-on, and the school has put enough pressure on you to, maybe you should keep them at home. Maybe you should do it. Maybe you should do it. And so now you've kind of like finally given in and you're like, fine, whatever. I'm going to homeschool. I totally understand that. And maybe they were receiving an IEP. So what do you do about that now? Maybe you don't feel qualified. So there's 2 different ways for you to address this. The first one is that you absolutely can still receive your IEP from public school. So you can reach out to your public school and say, hey, I need to get an IEP assessment. And you can still receive those resources. Now, just because your public school may have pressured you to take your kid out of school, because that happens often, does not mean that they get off the hook from giving you resources. You still pay taxes, and still you very much can still participate in resources. Different states have different rules, but ultimately I know here in Texas, we fought really hard to get homeschool kids to be able to be involved in sports within their local community as well. So, ask questions. Ask those questions if that's something that you want to be involved in. They can give you those resources. It's your right to have them. You're paying taxes, so you should receive that. Now, if you need more extensive care than you are receiving through public school, I highly recommend a private company coming to your house. There are a lot of ABA, speech therapists, OT, all kinds of resources that will come directly to your home and work with your kiddo. They can actually even help with homework. They can help them to learn ways to learn ways to communicate, and learn ways to be effective. And they do a lot of parent training as well. So they can teach you some resources to be successful as well. I've had huge success with doing that. And honestly, like I very selfishly would have kept them on, but they did such a great job that we really didn't need the services anymore. But I felt like I had like additional nannies, and my kid loved when they came over. It was their favorite. He would constantly be like, when's Kaylee going to be here? When's Kaylee going to be here? And so I would have selfishly kept them coming every single day. But it was really, really successful. Your insurance company will cover a majority of these costs once they've gone through an assessment process. Now, there are additional low-income options as well. So if you have Medicaid, if you have SSI, these are all things that you can apply for. If you're like, I don't know what any of those are, I highly recommend, and you can reach out to me and I can send you over to a resource of a great nonprofit that works with this, but there should be a nonprofit in your community that hyper focuses on whatever it is that your child specifically needs. So if they are autistic, ADD, ADHD, whatever their learning disability may be, they can help you to connect to the services and the resources that you may need and help you to walk through the resources to get those services as well. So let's talk about you as a teacher. Maybe you're feeling like, I don't know if I'm qualified for this. And I don't even know where to begin. And this is just stressing me out. I have to make a decision. We're about to go back to school. I want you to know that there are just some very non-subjective things that you need to understand. Schools put schools first, okay? Teachers put requirements first because they have to today. They have so many heavy requirements on them that they have to meet, that they can't always be what your child needs. School boards focus on PR first because it's about how it's perceived, about how it's communicated, about how it's come across. But parents put their kids first. And as long as you're putting your kid first, you're doing the right thing. You're doing what is the best thing for your kid. And there will never be a better teacher than you. There just won't, because you know your kid. Nobody knows your kid more than you do. And, as I'm in closing, I want to close with this scripture. Train up a child in the way he should go. Even when he is old, he will not depart from it. Proverbs 22:6. If you have a day where it's just not happening, like your kid is just screaming on the floor, throwing a tantrum, I don't want to do this, I'm not in the mood, and you are frustrated, it is okay to take a time out. It's okay to go, you know what, we're going to throw some VeggieTales on, or we're going to read an illustrated Pilgrim's Progress book. We're going to just lay here and have a snack and read a book. Teaching your kids worldview is the most important thing that you can do as a parent. It's the most important thing that you can do as their teacher. Because when they go out into the world and they hear other worldviews and they have hard conversations, their worldview should not be revolved around, oh, because my mom didn't let me, or my dad didn't let me, or I wasn't allowed to do that. They should know why right is right and wrong is wrong. And I understand that right and wrong are subjective to many different interpretations, but teaching them worldview and helping them to understand how to be strong in what they believe is the most important thing that you can do for their future. And it starts with you just being the example. So when you feel like you're impatient, when you feel like you're like, I just want to throw this kid against a wall. This is so frustrating. How is this happening to me right now? I am not being successful. Take a breath, take a minute, understand that just take a shift. There are other things that you can be teaching them right now. Don't get hung up on, he doesn't want to do this math at the moment. There are moments of connection and bonding that are so much more important to that child's future of not feeling neglect or isolated or misunderstood or unheard, that are going to be profoundly beneficial to his or her future. So I hope that you are encouraged by this. I really love when the reason I'm even doing this is because a lot of people have been hitting up my TikTok. They saw that I went to homeschool convention. They were like, can you give me more? And so I wanted to be able to touch on this. If there's something I didn't go over though, you're like, that's not what I was looking for, please go to madetowalk.org and fill out a content request form. It's a great way for me to gauge what kind of resources that you need and what kind of topics we should be diving into. But I'm excited about this season, and I'm excited that you guys are listening in. So thank you for your time, and I hope that you feel encouraged. Have a blessed day.